About 5 years ago, I lived in a small town in the US. I've always been a night person, so I would often find myself bored after my roommate went to sleep. To pass the time, I used to go for long walks and spend the time thinking. I spent 4 years like that, walking alone at night, and never once had I felt a reason to be afraid. I always used to joke with my roommate that even the drug dealers in this town were polite. But all of that changed in just a few minutes of one evening. It was a Wednesday, somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning, and I was walking near a police-patrolled park, quite a ways from where I lived. It was a quiet night, even for a weeknight, with very little traffic and almost no one on foot. The park, as it was most nights, was completely empty. I turned down a short side street in order to loop back to my apartment when I first noticed him. At the far end of the street, on my side, was the silhouette of a man dancing. It was a strange dance, similar to a waltz, but as he finished each third step, he would take a strange forward stride. I guess you could say he was almost dance walking, and he was heading straight for me. Deciding that he was probably drunk, I stepped as close as I could to the road to give him the majority of the sidewalk to pass me by. The closer he got, the more I realised how gracefully he was moving. He was very tall and thin and wearing an old suit, and as he danced closer still, I could make out his face. His eyes were open wide and wild, head tilted back slightly, looking off to the sky. His mouth was formed in a painfully wide cartoon of a smile. Between the eyes and the smile, I decided to cross the street before he danced any closer. I took my eyes off him to cross this empty street, and as I reached the other side, I glanced back, and this caused me to stop dead in my tracks. He'd stopped dancing and was standing with one foot in the street, perfectly parallel to me. He was facing me, but still looking skyward, the smile still wide on his lips. I was completely and utterly unearthed by this. I started walking again, but kept my eyes on this man. He didn't move, at least not at first. Once I'd put about half a block between us, I turned back for him for a moment to watch the sidewalk in front of me. The street and sidewalk ahead of me were completely empty. Still unnerved, I looked back to where he had been standing to find him gone, and for the briefest of moments I felt relieved. Then I noticed him again. He had crossed the street and was now slightly crouched down. I couldn't tell for sure due to the distance and the shadows, but I was certain he was facing me. I'd looked away from him for no more than 10 seconds, so it was clear that he had moved extremely fast. I was so shocked that I stood there for some time staring at him, and then he started moving towards me again. He took giant, exaggerated, tiptoed steps, almost as if he was a cartoon character sneaking up on someone, except he was moving incredibly quickly. I'd like to say at this point I ran away, or pulled out pepper spray or my phone or anything, but I didn't. I just stood there completely frozen, as the smiling man crept towards me. And then he stopped again, about a car length away from me, still smiling that odd smile, still looking from the sky. When I finally found my voice, I blurted out the first thing that came to my mind. What I meant to ask is, "What the hell do you want?" in an angry, commanding tone. But what came out was a whisper and a whimper, and regardless of whether or not humans can smell fear, they can certainly hear it. I heard it in my own voice, and that made me actually more afraid. But he didn't react to it at all. He just stood there smiling. And then, after what felt like forever, he turned around very slowly and just started dance walking away, just like that. Not wanting to turn my back to him again, I just watched him go until he was far enough away to almost be out of sight. And then I realized something. He wasn't moving away anymore, nor was he dancing. I watched in horror as the distant shape of him grew larger and larger. He was coming back my way, and this time he was running. At that point, I ran. I ran and I ran and I ran, and I never looked back. I ran until I was off that road and back into a better lit street with a few bits of traffic going past. Looking behind me then, he was nowhere to be found. The rest of the way home, I was glancing over my shoulder, always expecting to see that ridiculous smile, but he was never there. I lived in that town for 6 months after that night, and never once did I go out for another walk. There's something about that face that has always haunted me. He didn't look drunk, he didn't look stoned, he looked completely and utterly insane. And that is the most terrifying thing I have ever seen.